Hey, it's Joel Rosenberg, and I want to welcome you back. We are doing a series of interviews with really impressive thriller writers. I don't want what I'm doing to be just about the books I'm writing. I want this to be about books I'm reading, the books I'm loving. And this is an interesting interview because it's a total role reversal. I got to meet Ryan Steck because Ryan was reading my novels, not just mine. This guy is the dean of spy novels, thriller writers. He writes the definitive blog and website about all things thriller related, spy novels, political thrillers, anything within that range of genres, military thrillers and so forth. Ryan is the expert, and he has built a cottage industry around this website that not only reports all kinds of news and tidbits and interesting industry scuttlebutt about thrillers, writers, and the work they're doing, but he's the one that almost always is giving us advanced information about covers, titles, releases, and of course interviews and reviews. So that's his world. This is a world where he is sort of at the epicenter of the thriller writer industry, covering those of us who write thrillers. And now he's turned the tables, and that's a bit of a risky thing to do. He's written his first novel, the first of two, in a deal with Tyndale. I'm very happy to have Ryan, you as a Tyndale team member. So first of all, before I keep going on, welcome, Ryan. It's great to be with you.
Thank you so much for having me, Joel.
Well, this is an honor. And you know, in some ways, it turns out when I started writing thrillers or novels at all, I was amazed how many people want to do it. I didn't know that. In my, myopic world, I just thought I want to do it. And I got, very, very fortunate to not only do it, but get to keep doing it. But I guess one almost would assume that somebody who runs a thriller writer site, The Real Book Spy is the name of it, by the way, great site, got to make it a homepage for you, or at least a must-see site. The Real Book Spy, but of course you would love this genre, this range of genres. Actually, it's a range of genres, I think, and that you would love it, and you would be an expert in it. You're also an editor of these thrillers for people who want to hire you. But it is a risk. It's not a surprise that you wanted to write a novel, but it's a risk when you know, literally, personally, every single top thriller writer, and you review them, and they, of course, we all love you because you have such passion for this world, and you cover it so well. But it's a risk to then write your own novel and then sort of say, "Hey guys, I'm stepping into the fray." Not. I don't mean that as a competitive issue. I just mean, that's a high bar, because you're the guy that sets the bar. You're the guy that tells us how are we doing or not. So I just want to say that you have really blown me away in this new first debut novel, Fields of Fire. And so I want to get into the as much as we can. Obviously, we're not going to give it all away, or even most of it. We're going to set it up for people. But I just first have to get into the story with you. You, as far as I understand it, you scribbled out a short story about the guy that is now your hero, Maddie Redd. I love that, Maddie Redd. In a high school assignment that you then got suspended from high school for a week for the way you wrote it. And yet this character has captivated you all these years, and now you have really figured this thing out. Let's start there. Let's start you in a high school assignment, coming up with Maddie Redd. Who is this character? Who are you? And what happened? Why did you get kicked out of school?
Well, so
I think that's the right hook to get this thing started.
Oh, yeah, I think so. I mean, well, let me start with this. The principal who ultimately suspended me is my kid's principal now.
Okay.
So I've been able to go back, and he's like, "Hey, sorry about that." And I'm like, Maddie Redd is a gift that keeps giving. I got a week off school. I got a book deal. So it worked out. We had an intern for an English class. And she's now a dear friend of mine named Shay Vanderstelt Wentz. and she assigned us this creative writing thing. And like 10th grade English, no one wanted to do it. It was like groans across the room. And she was like, come on, guys, we can make this fun. She's like, you can write anything you want. I don't care if there's language. I don't care if there's violence. I don't care if there's this. And then so like, I'm like 15 at the time. And like most 15-year-olds, if you give me an inch, I'm going to go 10 miles with it. So I wrote about this teenage vigilante named Maddie Redd. And I thought it was good. And I pushed the envelope even on the wide range she gave us here to work with. And what I didn't know was that it was a peer-to-peer thing where we had to read each other's short story in front of the class. Okay. And I can still remember the poor kid that got mine. His name was Trenton Hearn, and he got mine and had to read it. And his face was just blushing, and it was like clearly not high school level. I mean, it wasn't the language. Far. It was like, I really cared about like character development back then. I just didn't know what that was. You know, I was putting like a lot into it. It ended up being like 5 times longer than it was supposed to be. And I thought it was good. The next day, I got called down to the principal's office, and I came down, and the superintendent was there. My parents were there, and I was like, this is not good. And they thought I was just like deranged. And they were like, this is so far past the assignment. And the intern, Shay, really fought for me and was like, I should be in trouble, not him. And they were like, no, he should be in trouble. Like, he definitely took it too far. And so my parents were really cool about it. They were like, you know what? At the end of the day, this was actually like a good little story. You know, he might have went too far for high school level, but he did do what was asked. And so I didn't get punished. You know, like the whole adage, like, you get in trouble at school, you're in trouble at home. I do that to my kids, right? And my parents were like, take a week off. And so it was really cool. So it wasn't like this bad memory. What happened is I got into my adult life, and you'll know this way better than me, but like, these characters are a part of you. And everyone that has said to me like, hey, Ryan, are you Maddie Redd? And I'm like, no. My wife probably wishes I looked like him, but no. I am Maddie Redd if I were 6'3.5", 265 pounds of muscle, right? And could get away with some of the stuff that he can. But there's a side to him that's so real to me. It's like a very close friend that I know so well that I could never meet. It's so weird. And talking to authors, other writers, far better than me, like you, I get to explain it, and they don't think I'm crazy. But if I talk to like our friends about that, they're like, well, that sounds nuts. You probably shouldn't say that in interviews, you know?
Yeah, if you tell somebody, I got this friend, he's invisible, he doesn't exist, but we talk and I know his life. Yeah, then you're going to get the men in the white truck are going to come.
100%.
Let's set up before we go any further. Let's set up a little bit more of who Maddie Redd is. He's around 30 years old. He's a Marine. He loves the Corps. I mean, this is what he was built for. You said he was 6'3", 265 or thereabouts. He's not quite as big as Jack Reacher, but he's a Hulk. And he's a beast. And he's been raised by his adoptive father, named JB, and instilled with these values that are really shaping who he is. Part of why he loves the Corps, part of why he this is a guy who wants to be honest, wants to do the right thing, wants to protect the country, loves the country. But he gets drawn. So this is who he is. So let's in a moment, we'll talk about how his life blows up, that everything that he thinks is good and that he understands and the trajectory is on goes sideways because he's set up on something. We'll talk about that in a moment, but drill into more about Maddie Redd. Like, now he's Matthew Redd, but but this is a character that you've known in a sense, or at least been thinking about for 20
a long time
years.
Yeah, I you had talked a lot about making the switch to go be an author, and I had thought about it for a long time. It always really intimidated me, and I didn't have the time. I have 6 kids, but Redd stayed with me for a long time, and he was so fleshed out in my mind that I would find myself in various points in my life thinking, I wonder how he'd respond to this. I wonder what he would think about this. And when I got into my adult world, it was like overwhelming. I was like, I need to find out where he's at today. I knew where he was when I was 15. I need to know where he's at today and what he has to say now. And then being a book spy and an editor, I didn't want to write anything close to what anyone else had really done that I'd touched as a critic, as an editor, as a friend.
Well, that's tough to do because you're covering the whole gamut of different styles and different characters.
It really is. I really had to sit and think, where can I take this guy that no one's going to read it and go, oh, you took that from Vince Flynn, or hey, you took that from Joe Rosenberg. Like, I was like, man, this is, so I started thinking about it. And like, one day it just hit me that you never see Mitch Rapp or Jason Bourne in Montana. We never see that. And I love that part of the country. So I was like, all right, he's going to go to Montana. I just didn't know why. And
you're a Michigan guy, right?
You're not. Yep.
Have you spent time in Montana?
I've been out west, but I haven't spent extensive time like I am now because I set the whole series there. So that was, by the way, that was one thing from Tyndale. They're like, how much time have you spent out there? And I was like, not as much as I'm going to be.
So just for the record, for those of you who are tracking with me, like my latest character, Marcus Riker, he grows up on the Front Range of Colorado in a little town called Monument, Colorado, just outside of Colorado Springs. And he's a creature, as it were, of the West. He's a creature, but not quite big sky country. I mean, the Front Range is different for a number of reasons. But I didn't grow up here. But the difference is, my parents moved here, and we were all mad. Like when they sold the childhood house. What do you? I was already married at this point. I was living in D.C. helping candidates lose their elections. But anyway, total failed career. That's why I went into making things up for a living. But my parents moved from a little town outside of Rochester, New York. So I'm a New Yorker. My dad's from Brooklyn. My mom's from upstate, the whole thing. Anyway, and they move out here. I'm like, what are you doing? Why? But we loved it. We, my wife, my kids, we just fell in love with Colorado and the West in general. And it started, we spent so much time here over the years. I thought, well, I got to plant a character out here. I remember there was a poster or a billboard, I guess, when you arrived at Denver International Airport back in the day. It's not there now. And it said, "Welcome to Denver, a change of altitude and a change of attitude." That really captured, certainly coming from DC out to the West. But so there's something about Montana that is not only inside you, but you want to be part of this character. And he gets pulled back into quite a brouhaha in Montana.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's something so appealing about the Wild West. Well, you know what else is funny, Joel? So I actually wrote the first draft.
He's a bit of a cowboy too. You say that
he absolutely
think of JB as the adopted father as a cowboy.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what's so hilarious. When I wrote this first draft 6 years ago, I knew in my heart it was like a modern day Western. And I remember talking to my agent about it, and he's like, "Let's never say that publicly. Let's." And I was like, "Deal." And so when I signed with Tyndale and we did the whole, it was like the media questionnaire stuff that you do. And I was like, it's a modern day Western, but I'll never say that publicly. And so they put some pretty subtle hints about that into the cover. What's funny is since I wrote this, Yellowstone took off. 1883 took off.
I don't know why that's so bad.
The Westerns are like back. And I went from like, let's not say that publicly to like, we should probably shout that from the rooftops, like really quick. There was like a big shift. And it is a modern day West. I think the fear was people know me as a book spy. They probably don't expect modern day Western, and that could have turned them off. Well,
that's what's interesting. It's a mashup of a bit of Jack Reacher, CJ Box. You got the military guy, but he's not going international. So you have this really interesting thing where you expect from the opening scenes either this is happening abroad or the next thing was going to happen abroad, right? Yeah. And that's where I've spent, so much of my writing is in the Middle East. But to put a character like Maddie Redd inside the United States and in the heart of the West makes it not a classic Western like Louis L'Amour or something, but it does bring some very interesting elements that aren't in most thrillers. I'm not saying there aren't some, obviously, but
sure.
Yeah, that's an advantage, I think, for you.
the whole idea that, like, you know, when you're out west, they don't call 911. It's not the same as living in the city. Like when they have like an issue, they handle that. And that was Redd to a T. I knew that. Dropping him there, it really worked. The fear for me when I came up with the idea, my very patient and wonderful agent, John Talbot.
Before you tell the idea, I mean, tell us the idea. So far in the interview, people are like, okay, we got this character. It's in Montana. He's a Marine, but set up. And again, I want you to do it the way you won't give away too much, but that really captures people, because it's a very cool premise. Very compelling.
It all started with this idea. I love so many authors. Like, you're one of my literary heroes. So many authors that I really love. And the two most influential in my life has been Vince Flynn and CJ Chuck Box, right? And so I remember I told my very patient agent, John Talbot, I said, I'm going to write a book. It's going to be Vince Flynn meets CJ Box. And I remember he just had like this long audible sigh where he was like, oh, what's that look like? And I was like, give me like a year. I don't know. I'm going to go find out. The setup here is that Maddie Redd, you pretty much nailed him in the opening. So he's a Marine when we first meet him, and absolutely loves being part of the military and everything that he thinks that embodies. And what I wanted to explore was this theme of when everything materialistic in your life, everything that you identify with is ripped from you, who are you? And what do you become and what do you do? And so very early on, Redd is kicked out of the military for reasons that are really outside of his control for the most part. And the one person he's afraid to tell is his adopted father, Jim Bob Thompson, who is a cattle rancher in a fictional town called Wellington, Montana. And Redd is terrified to tell him. And when he finally gets the guts to call him, he realizes that he's got a missed call voicemail from Jim Bob, who he calls JB. That is garbled, but he makes out troubles come knocking, might need your help. And Redd knows this harkens back to like the whole no one calls 911 out west.
This is interesting.
He knows if he's calling me for help, something bad happened. So when he can't reach him, Redd,
the guy a few years back had broke his back and didn't call for help, like just took care of himself. So Matt knows that this is serious, and he drives straight to Wellington, gets to Montana, and finds out that his adopted father is dead. And the circumstances that he's told about the death don't sit well with him. And he starts investigating and poking around. Obviously,
and the timing of it does not sit well with him. True. Yeah, correct.
Hoodwink, or what's the right word? I mean, sucker punched.
Yep.
Almost, in his whole life and career.
Absolutely. He's kicked out of the military. He comes back home for the first time in over a decade. It finds out his father's dead. Then he really starts to believe he's killed. The interesting thing for me when I was writing it is Redd is an operator. He is a sledgehammer in a scalpel's world. And that's what I loved about him. He doesn't quite fit in really anywhere. And he's not an investigator. He is not a detective. So trying to figure out what happened to his father is very frustrating for him. He is used to like, here's your file, here's the target, go hit them. That's what we're doing. For him to have to try to figure out what happened, he just makes things worse and constantly pulls himself into situations he doesn't need to be in. And in the midst of it all, uncovers a global conspiracy that really only he can stop. And along the way, sure, I wanted action. You guys set the bar so high. Like, here's the problem with any new writer, okay? You beat headlines like you have a time machine. It's not fair. So when I look at stuff, I'm like, well, all right, I'm never going to beat headlines like Joe Rosenberg or Brad Thor, because I don't know how you guys do that. And I'm never going to like go on Fox News and stuff like you guys, because I'd rather listen to you than me anyways. Like, you offer so much more. So I really had to find my area. And what I believe in is characters. A lot of people know I got into the industry being a huge fan of Vince Flynn and Mitch Rapp. And the reason was because I have 6 kids, and one of them was going through a really tough medical situation where they had to have like 24-hour care, basically. Like, my wife and I had to split, and I got the night shift. And a lot of people read before bed to get tired. Opposite effect for me when it's thrillers. I read to stay up. So I just read everything then. And the characters become, so real, and I love them so much. So this, for me, was like this deep character exploration where I wanted to find out, who is Maddie Redd, and who is he when everything that he identifies with is taken from him. Right. That was really the challenge. And so in this, it's localized to Montana with a much bigger conspiracy lurking as the truth begins to come out about what happened to his father. Now Redd is able to use these tools, right, that he's assembled and built and perfected over his course in the military. Once he has a target, I get to unleash him. And that was a lot of fun to write. But yeah, the buildup is, at its heart, it's like this modern day Western that's also kind of a mystery novel that is wrapped in a thriller. And I enjoyed different parts of writing it and trying to take readers through that. But look, Joel, as you know, like the biggest fear of all is I had no idea if it worked. I remember when I wrote it and I was like, I told my wife, like, I was like, I'm done. And she's like, is it good? And I was like, I have no idea. And so you really don't know. And I will tell you something funny. I get to be, and I'm so honored. So many authors send me their work right away so I can read it and they pick my brain. And that's great. And I love, it's so much easier being on that side of it, just so you know. Like, I'm much more comfortable being the book spy than an author, because you don't realize how vulnerable you are putting yourself out there like that. Sure. Everyone I'm friends with that I had to ask for a blurb, I don't think there was one author that was just like, hey, I read it, loved it, here's the blurb. They all had to have their fun. And I won't name names, but one of them, it was like, oh, you've been reviewing my books for a decade, buddy. You just wait. You know, I remember that one book that you said it wasn't my best, but you still liked it. Let me see what you got. And literally, I got the blurb. I'll never forget it. I opened it and it was like a really decent, semi-okay debut. Probably just get it from the library. Don't actually spend money on it. And I was like, oh my gosh. And then 5 minutes later, I got like another email. I was like, ha, 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 ha. I'm just kidding. Absolutely love this. Terrific. You awesome. My socks off. Here's your real blurb, which is one that we really used. And I was like, so they've all done that. So that was the first one. And everyone's had their fun in the industry, taking their shots at me. But you don't realize truly how vulnerable you feel writing 100,000 words and then putting it out there. And I didn't know if it was good. I didn't know if it worked. I just knew that I wasn't writing for anyone else at the time. I was writing for me to see who this character was.
It does work. It's really impressive. I mean, I think it's fair to say it's very impressive as a debut novel, but I think if somebody just read this novel, they're going to say, okay, well, where are the others? Like, they're not going to think of this as a debut novel. You know, it's almost like if you've gotten into a TV series and that you really love, and then you say, I'm going to go back and watch the pilot. Some pilots are clunky. I love Seinfeld. This has nothing to do with this genre, but if you go back and watch the first 4 episodes of the Seinfeld Chronicles, you're not going to think of this as, the #1 show of the 90s. It's just not, it's not even close. But they found their way, and for some reason NBC let them, gave them the time. Now, but there are other pilots you're like, wow, these guys knew exactly what they were doing, and they just blow out the doors from the first get-go. That's what you've done, and now you've got a new challenge, and that is you've set your own bar. You've set the bar for everybody else, and now you have to go keep it. Are you already finished with book 2, or you? Yeah.
So, so there's a saying in our industry that a lot of readers don't know, but they'll understand. So you have your whole life to write your first book. You have 1 year to write your second book. And that basically means you take forever to write that first book. When you get a deal and it's like a multi-book deal. So I signed a 2-book deal with Tyndale. It dawned on me at some point, they're going to want this other book. Right. And so I went back and looked at
Ryan, that's, you're not a real book spy for nothing, man.
I was like, I'm really gonna have to write this. And I looked at the contract, and I signed my deal, and I think we got deep into talks in March. It was all official May of last year. They wanted book 2 turned in, the first draft, obviously, June 1st of this year. So I was like terrified, because as an editor, I work with all my clients, and I'm like, you need to outline. I need an outline. I want to be able to see it. We can talk about it. It will help you. And then I'm the world's biggest hypocrite, Joel, because I can't outline. I tried so hard to outline. And then there's another small secret in the industry. You usually have a payment tied to your outline. So I remember telling my agent, I was like, I can't outline. This isn't going to work. And he's like, well, you had a payment tied to that, so you better figure out how to make that work. And so I I sent in like 5 or 6 pages, and I thought I'd get feedback from Tyndale. They're probably going to watch this and they'll be laughing, but they were like, "This is great," and I was like, "Oh," and they cut a check, and I was like, "I guess I'm going to go write this book now." So that was, and I'm not kidding, that was like all they accepted the idea, and I was like October. And I had a lot of time before October to really get my arms around this story. I'm so visual that I have to really see this like a long movie in my head before I can sit and write it. Mm-hmm. And so once I had book 2, I wrote October, November, December, and then most of January. And then I spent 2 weeks editing in January, and I turned it in February 1st. So ahead of June, which my agent was like, "We should have sat on that for a while. They're going to think you could do 2 books a year." And I was like, "Oh gosh, no." But that I went through the same thing with that. It was like terrifying to me because I was like, "Is it good?" And everyone at Tyndale I turned in so early. They were all busy. No one looked at it. My agent was busy. And I think like 2 months went by and I hadn't heard anything. And I was like, "This is going to be a problem." I was like, everyone's going to hate it. And I remember the day I was on a Zoom call with a client, and my agent called 3 times and then texted me. He never does that. And he texted me, "Call me about book 2." And I was like, "Uh-oh." So I was like, "Hey, I really need to go. I have like a personal thing." And I call him and he's like, "This is great. This is the best thing you've ever written. I absolutely love this. I'm so blown away. I can't believe it." And I was like, "Are you sure?" Like I was so. And,
maybe you dialed the wrong number. Maybe who do you think you're on the phone with right now?
I was probably talking to Brad Taylor, another one of his clients. I was so nervous. But then the feedback from Tyndale was, like really positive. And you know how talented they are there. So I was like, listen, if they like it, they're only going to make it better. Which
they're not kidding. And I will say this, and it's important, I think, for my readers. First of all, I want, absolutely, you've got to go pre-order Fields of Fire. September 6th, I think it comes out.
Thank you.
So pre-order it now. But which, by the way, and I will also say, it's coming out in hardcover. There are very few novelists these days in the industry that come out in a debut novel in hardcover. That's more time than we have because we got to wrap up. But like people, it's hard to break into this industry. And so the easiest way for a publisher to do it is say, well, let's put it out as an ebook or maybe as a paperback, and maybe both. But it's a high risk to put out a book like this from somebody that nobody has read their work before, at least, as a novel in hardcover. But that's what's happening. So I'm really excited about that. And but I will say, Tyndale they are not. They're a Christian publisher, but the reason I love them is because they really understand the general market and they understand the Christian market, and they will push until they feel like they have something that's your best, my best, and they can really get excited about selling. And I've had books where they're like, "This is awesome. There's hardly any changes." And I've had books where like, "How many trips do you have coming up? Because you may want to cancel all those. We've got some significant issues, and I think it's going to take some time." And I'm like, "Oh, that's not what I want to hear."
Yeah.
But they're amazing. And so if you've gotten, we're getting into the book 2. Let's just finish up on book 1, Fields of Fire. It's really encouraging. I think that my readers are definitely going to love it. And I think what's interesting is you have a really ideal place now that you have a book that works, because you do have, you've got great endorsements. Go to Amazon or go to Barnes & Noble or wherever you get books, or go to Tyndale's site. And I want to encourage all these readers to go read these endorsements, because these are not by oh, my mom's cousin Nellie decided she liked it. And some, when movies come out that are really bad, but they find, the Timbuktu Times that said, "Oh, must see, 2 thumbs up." These are some of the best thriller writers in the world are gushing over Fields of Fire, and rightly so. So, how you feeling? Let's wrap this thing up. But Ryan, it's very impressive. What else do we need to know just to stick the landing here?
Well, first of all, thank you.
Sure.
Getting blurbs is nerve-wracking. Big thank you to Chuck Box was my cover blurb. Dream come true. CJ Box. I get to call him Chuck now, which is still surreal to me. Mark Rainey and Jen Carr
and I
Brad
can
Taylor.
say Vince would have loved this book. You know, you knew it
thank
better
you,
than me,
man.
but the mashup in your head of these two, yeah, absolutely. He would have been very inspired by your journey.
Well, I really appreciate that. So thank you. I'm really excited. It's been a dream of mine for a long time. I've always wanted to be a storyteller. I think you are a storyteller before you're an author. And to finally sit down and put, well, not pen to paper anymore, you know, fingers to keyboard and have it be here is so surreal. These last few months have gone so quick. And now we're pretty close to publication. It's starting to feel real. And so I'm really excited. My hope is that if you like thrillers or mysteries or the modern day Western stuff, you'll find something in here for you that you'll enjoy. So thank you so much for all the kind words, Joel. I appreciate it more than you know.
I'm thrilled for you. And I know that sounds like a pun and it's goofy, but I actually mean it. And so Ryan Steck, Fields of Fire, September 6th, pre-order now, and you are going to love this thriller. This is Joel Rosenberg on the Front Range, not quite Montana, where Ryan's book is set, but in Colorado. And great to have you. Thanks for watching. Make sure to pass this on to others. Thanks.